What's great about drag is that you don't need a casting director or anyone to say yes. You don't need to wait for someone to agree that you're worth casting or agree that you're worth taking a risk on or whatever, or showcasing in any way. You don't need to wait for anyone to say yes. What's great about drag is you just do it. The beginnings of my drag journey, I was out of college. I was trying to be an actor, sort of, and I was trying to be a dancer. And I also was a director, and I didn't know where to put any of those things. No one was giving me opportunities. And I was interested in drag, but I didn't really know that I could do it. And I also wasn't interested in the traditional drag king, like super butch kind of suit and tie and like ultra masculine. I wasn't super interested in that either. So I had this idea that drag might be the right platform, but I didn't know how to go into it. And then when I finally came to the idea of potentially performing in drag, I was like, great, but who am I? What is the persona? And then unrelated, I went to a Halloween party one year and I decided to dress as a satanic mechanic. So I glued horns onto my head. I was in like a red Dickies jumpsuit, and then I put a name tag that said mechanic on it. And I thought it was super obvious, reference to a Rocky Horror Picture Show. And people kept asking me who I was. So I eventually moved from saying I'm a satanic mechanic to saying that I was God, just to see how people would react. And by the end of the night, I was like, that's it, that's the name. The following Bushwig, I went as an audience member, dressed as God in this satanic mechanic uniform. Just in the crowd watching drag, I was like, Complex, that's the last name. And then it all sort of rolled together from there. Early influences, of course, I was looking to people like Kay James and Vigor Mortis from Switch and Play. I've never had like a drag family, and I've never really wanted to. I've kind of like being unmoored, but the majority of my influences were, rock stars or horror films or elements from cinema and things like that. I was looking to that a little bit more than I was looking to particular drag performers. When I looked at drag performers that I wanted to be like, they were actually usually queens or kind of nondescript somewhere in the middle, because I was interested in something that I wasn't exactly seeing at the time with kings so much. Dance is like perhaps the primary influence of my drag performances. You know, when I first started, I definitely was like a really big mover. I was really interested in being kind of explosive and embodying that rock star energy and kind of a more contemporary dance vibe. But these days, I'm actually much more interested in stillness, and I think it's about holding the tension of movement now. I'm much more interested in the harnessing of it and the idea of presence than I am interested in kind of like exploding out and like releasing energy through movement. I'm kind of like reining it in to the opposite end of the spectrum now, which to me is still extraordinarily dance-based. Every single performance I do is like heavily rooted in movement, whether I am moving a lot or not at all. These days, God Complex performances are very concept-driven. I'm usually interested in exploring presence as like a primary thrust, how to shift an entire world or create an entire world as one person and one body for 5 minutes to 10 minutes at a time. It's been challenging in moments where my performances don't quite match up to the kind of drag that other people are doing in the same show, or the work that I'm doing is a little bit too extreme or intense for a more mainstream drag audience. And I do have those performances that are really palatable for a mainstream audience too, although I like to push them no matter what. But I do think it's been pretty limiting. I think I've boxed myself in for a long time, especially when I started. I was doing stuff that's a little bit more mainstream and palatable in terms of what the song choices were and things like that, but I was always giving, like horror vibes and always wearing horns every time, until there was a moment where I was like, I've just crafted for myself this tiny little box, and for the only person who is deciding that I can't go beyond that is me. And that also included doing things that were a little bit more extreme. So after I kind of gave that up, I gave the horn thing up and kind of internalized that. And then from there, I started to push what the content of the acts actually were. And so now, it's honestly even become challenging to codify myself as simply a drag performer or even a drag king, because I think I'm touching something else sometimes. A lot of it is in as little of a pretentious way as I can possibly say, is more like performance art or ritual or touching sideshow. In that way, I think that a lot of my audiences have been weeded out until I've collected this group of people who are really interested in seeing work that pushes boundaries and work that is uncomfortable or is disturbing in a way that disturbs the error, not disturbing as in harmful. I think I've found that audience that's really appreciative of it, and there are very particular moments that I've gotten to really push people who I know have no idea and have never seen anything like what I do, and those moments are very special to me. Like the performance I'm doing tonight, I've been asked to do many times, and there was one moment where I had to clownify it, quite literally put on a bit literal red nose and a clown suit in order for me to move through it in a way where my engagement with the audience and my energetic back and forth between me and the audience wasn't harmful to me. No one has ever been like, you can't do that. Maybe that's not true. People probably have said you can't do that and I just ignore it, so I can't even hear it anymore. But there have been moments where I have shifted things for myself in order to protect myself and protect my energy. This performance that I'm doing tonight has become perhaps the most important performance that I've ever made in my entire history of drag. I call it the anti-exorcism. So yeah, there's before the anti-exorcism and after the anti-exorcism. And it's totally changed the trajectory of my drag and has kind of really solidified for me that drag performance can be ritual and can be something that's real and happening right now. So it's kind of where all of the satanic, vibes that I was trying to give when I first started doing drag, it's that's all been thrown out, but the roots, the real roots of that have shown up in this. I don't think I've seen any other drag performances like this. It's very hard to describe. It's hard to touch what this is. So I really have to pay attention to the literal space that I'm doing it in and who is going to be there and what the audience is expecting. And I tailor it very slightly towards whatever that is, which is why I had that experience where I was asked to do it. I did the exact number, but in a clown look. It was a bridge and tunnel audience that was not interested in drag, definitely not a very queer audience, not an audience that was particularly receptive to art, in big fat quotation marks. So in order to protect myself and to protect the performance, I made this shift and I'm super grateful for it. I'm excited to do it again. To me, drag at the end of the day is about vulnerability. I think there's a really big distinction for me between a good drag performer and a great drag performer, which is there's the version of drag where the makeup and the costume and the look is all about putting something on, layering something on like you're layering on layers of masks. I think a great drag performer uses those things to actually take things off and reveal something about themselves. It's about vulnerability for me. I know that that's not how every drag performer sees it, but that has been what's been the kind of staple driving mission of why I've continued to do it. My personal gender journey and drag journeys are, like so many people, kind of like simultaneous in some way. I had gender feelings before I started doing drag, and then the drag really helped me understand that and codify it. When I first started doing drag, I was doing stuff that's like much more clearly traditionally masculine, and I was also much more attached to the idea of being a drag king. But as I have sort of like accepted my own gender as like a trans masc person, it has like let my gender expression in drag really blossom. I kind of like maintain the codifier drag king because there are so few of them that are like well supported in the world of drag. But in reality, I don't really think that like king or queen makes a lot of sense to frame around God complex. I don't think that God complex is of royalty. The gender expression and the gender that I experience now as a person day to day has allowed the more femme parts of me to come out, especially in drag. And it makes me, I don't know, it's just been interesting to play with God complex as a femme king, as a femme kind of like beautiful drag king. When I first started doing drag, I definitely felt that I needed to make sure that everybody in the audience and everybody else in the cast knew that I was portraying a masculine figure. I would never lip sync to a song that wasn't sung by a man. I would do as much as I could to be this kind of like weird demonic creature, but make it as masc as possible. I definitely felt like a little bit of pressure about that because I was afraid of how people would see, you know, it's like as a trans person, I am constantly concerned about how people see me and how people are experiencing my gender through their eyes. And that was the same thing that was happening for me at the beginning of the drag journey too. I was worried how people were seeing God complex. What I would change about the national drag scene is a greater acceptance of kings and things, and a greater acceptance of drag performance that moves way far beyond turning on a top 40 track and like putting on a random look and saying go. I think that there will always be a place for that in drag, but I'm really interested in a world where drag is a part of the greater art conversation. We're starting to get that now a little bit slowly, but I'm a maximalist and I'm interested in the way that drag fits into theater. How can it be expanded and grown past, you know, just a singular person performing in a gendered way on stage to a random track? The show tonight is untitled Witch at Come On Everybody. It's a show that is comprised of a lot of really artistic and cerebral drag performers, and we're all doing works that are witchy in nature in whatever way. I think there will be a really amazing variety of what witch means to each performer. Luckily for me, I'm performing alongside some of my favorite people and performers in the scene: Untitled Queen, Lucy Balls, Patty Spliff, Mocha Light, Klondike, and Amygdala, and me. To me, one of the greatest parts about drag is that you get to be as on the nose as possible, and you are rewarded for it graciously, as opposed to other art forms where the idea, like, you're kind of told that you have to be like aloof and that it has to be layered. Drag, no, you can be exactly on the nose and you are so well rewarded for it. This performance tonight, it's called the Anti-Exorcism, and I had the idea for it a few years ago, listening to this extraordinary musician, Lingua Ignota. As with so many of my acts, I don't think I'm the greatest person to perform this. Like, I don't think that my body is the perfect casting for this performance, but I'm the only one around and I'm the only one who thought of it. So here I am doing it. It's like a live ritual that has developed over time. and it's different every time. But I just had the image of this like kind of horror-esque resurrection. I'm thinking about horror creatures like Samara from The Ring or The Grudge, or whatever those kind of imagistic ideas are, but something that isn't necessarily evil but is dark, like a dark force. And that's how it started. And then as it developed, it turned into something that was almost untouchable. It's like 3 or so minutes of me in a pretty intense backbend. At best, I really am not, my mind is really not present while I do it, which is not something that I expected. And I admit that I can hear and understand how that sounds like absolutely bonkers, but it's just become such an important staple to the kind of work I do, because everything that I've created after that has been from understanding at least what I can do internally for myself when I perform that act. It's very still. There's not a lot of movement. It's really about presence. And from the moment that I made that on, I think that that's been the thing that I'm exploring is just presence, and how can I shift the entire world as one body for 5 minutes at a time. And I probably fail every time, but I think that the attempt is the important part.
Their productions, their details are just so next level. We are so happy to have them and to be a part of their feature of Queens of Kings. Lucy, Patty, and I were featured in this series like 301 years ago. We're so happy. All right, you ready, baby? Please give it up for God Complex!
years ago.